Welcome back to the FTN NFL Team Preview Series. I'm your host, Mike Randle. Follow me on X at Randle Rand. And today we go down to Jacksonville to talk with the Jaguars. And if you follow this series, the only person I talk to is Michael DiRocco. You can find him on X at ESPN DiRocco. Mike, thank you so much for coming back and joining us here. I want to start with the wide receiver room. Jaguars, no Calvin Ridley anymore, to me means a huge situation for Christian Kirk, who's been productive, who's been fantastic, has history and a connection with Trevor Lawrence. How do you think that's going to go? How is Brian Thomas, the dynamic rookie, doing? And Evan Ingram, who was just dominating the last couple of years, is that going to continue? Let's start off with that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me, first of all. Christian Kirk, I'm expecting a big year out of him because of the addition of Brian Thomas and Gabe Davis in free agency to kind of stretch that field a little bit. So that should open things up in the middle of the field for Christian Kirk. You know, he's healthy. He's looked great at OTAs and no signs of the groin injury that bothered him the last 6 weeks of the season. Kept him out of, actually missed all of those games because of that groin injury. But I'm expecting him. His numbers may not look as good as they did 2 years ago. You know what I mean? So it may be like a 900-yard season, but he's the guy that Trevor Lawrence trusts the most. He's the guy that when he was out of the lineup last year, the passing game was it really, really struggled, even with Calvin Ridley in there. So I think Evan Ingram is going to thrive in the middle of the field again. I know, talking to him, his goal is to sort of extend the plays and average a little bit more yards per catch. He averaged around 9 yards per catch last year on 114 catches, and he obviously wants to make some more plays down the field. And again, like I said, the stretching of the field on the outside should open the middle of that in there. And Brian Thomas is as fast as advertised, and he looks really, really smooth running around out there. But the one thing to me that has stuck out is Trevor Lawrence talking about him and saying he's picked up the offense ridiculously quickly. And they've been wanting him to ask questions in meetings and when they're out there on the field to make sure that he understands, but he doesn't have to ask any questions because he knows everything. He knows the offense already. And wide receivers coach Chad Hall told me the other day that he's probably one of the smartest rookies that he's ever coached in terms of picking up a team's offense when he got here. So that's a really good sign for the Jags when your rookie is that far ahead and we're not even, at the start of camp yet.
Yeah, it certainly is. And just to remind everyone, Christian Kirk 2 years ago, 84 catches, 133 targets, 1,100 yards, 8 touchdowns. So Mike's exactly right. Let's turn to the backfield. Travis Etienne, great year. It looked like they wanted to get Tank Bigsby involved, and it just never seemed to materialize. Certainly the coaching staff has been open about how they have to get Bigsby involved, how they want to be involved more. My question to you, what would that look like? Would he get some goal line touches? How do you see Bigsby being worked in here behind Etienne, who had a tremendous year?
Yeah, that was the thing. They talked big about that last year because they don't want Travis to have all that pounding, and it never materialized because essentially they lost trust in Tank Bigsby. In the opener, he had a ball bounce off his hands that was intercepted. He put the ball on the ground later on in the season. They just did not have the trust in him, especially in terms of being a pass protector. So it's sort of like same old story. We're hearing the same stuff. They want to make him the number 2 guy, make him a guy that they can rely on. I think early in the season, we'll see them try and get him involved, give him a drive or two in a game, just to kind of test and see if he's able to handle that. But definitely short yardage is where they're going to use him for sure. Goal line, 3rd and 1, 4th and 1. That's kind of what they drafted him to do last year, to be honest with you, because they've been so bad at short yardage the last 2 seasons. But they had offensive line issues last year. So that's part of it as well. But the goal this year would be, Travis Etienne had about 80% of the running back touches last year. They want to get that number down 65, 70%. Dearness Johnson has proven, when he was in Cleveland, he can handle the workload, and he did a solid job of that last year. So the expectation going into this year is spread it out a little bit more. But again, that was the expectation last year, and it never materialized. But one of the things the Jags wanted to make a concerted effort to do this year was get those young guys involved at any position, because you don't, if you draft them and they're sitting, what's the point of drafting them? You got to get them on the field. You got to let them help you out. And I think we'll see more of that early in the season. And if Bigsby holds their trust, then I think he'll have a bigger role by the end of the year.
That's great insight, Mike. Let's look at the quarterback, Trevor Lawrence. So 2 years ago, we're coming off of 2022, 9-8 season, won the division, tremendous comeback against the Chargers, legendary in the playoffs, in a very, very impressive battle with the Chiefs. They lost 27-20. So I would say last year, when he was coming off a year 2 years ago, 4,100 passing yards, 25 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. Last year, sort of a mixed bag, up and down, still broke 4,000 yards. Completion percentage was good, but the 14 interceptions, 21 touchdowns. I think it's very possible that people are sort of pushing Trevor Lawrence a little bit too further down, and he can actually have the bounce back year that maybe we projected last year. What say you here on Trevor Lawrence entering critical year here for him, year 4 with the Jaguars?
Yeah, here's the thing. He was hurt the last 6 weeks of the season. He didn't practice fully. He didn't actually really participate in any practice since December 15th. So that was obviously a factor. He told us that, hey, he didn't even feel completely healthy until March. So
was that the New Orleans game, Mike? Was that New Orleans game where he got, I think?
He got hurt the week before against Indianapolis, and that was the knee. Then he played that following Thursday against New Orleans, had one of his better games of the year. But then he got hurt against Cincinnati, hurt the ankle against Cincinnati, concussion against Baltimore, and then the shoulder injury against Tampa Bay on Christmas Eve. He was just a mess. Now, but if you take the second half of 2022 and you take the first 11 games of 2023, that was a 17-game stretch, okay? The Jags were 13-4 in that stretch there, and Trevor had 29 touchdown passes and 9 interceptions.
Great point.
So that's, he's got a 17-game stretch where you look at him and you go, okay, he's a guy that can take this team deep into the playoffs and maybe get him to the Super Bowl. Now, he's got to put it all together in 1 year. And losing Christian Kirk last year was a massive, massive blow to that offense. And I mentioned the offensive line problems before. That unit was just not great. I think it ranked 31st overall pass block win rate, which is one of ESPN's metrics. It just was not a good unit, especially in the middle where Brandon Sheriff, the right guard, was hurt again. Luke Fortner, the center, did not make any strides from his rookie year and actually looked like he regressed. And Lawrence had guys in his face pretty much from the snap. So it was not an ideal situation for him last year there. Doug Peterson said this year, hey, I learned way back when I was playing with Mike Holmgren that it sometimes takes quarterbacks 3 or 4 years to really kind of start to hit their stride. And he's liked what he's seen from Lawrence in terms of the offense. He's putting more input into shaping the offense, shaping game plans. And he mentioned the term jump year. So I think there's some expectation inside that building that Lawrence is going to have that big season this year that we all thought he was going to have last year. So look, he looked good. He's looked good in camp. There were a couple of days where we don't get access to, look good in OTAs. We don't get access to every OTA. We get one a week. But the last one we were at, I didn't see a ball hit the ground from Trevor Lawrence. So that's, it doesn't sound like a big deal, but sometimes you just miss a throw. Sometimes, a guy is not in the right spot. You overthrow a deep throw. It just happens. It's just the way it works. But he didn't miss a single throw in that last OTA that we were out at. So he's looked good. We'll see if that contract extension gets done, but people inside that building believe he's going to have a massive 2024.
Yeah, I agree. Sort of a post-hype sleeper, if you will, only because people thought he was really going to go to that upper echelon last year. I think it can happen this year. Mike, you've been fantastic. Last question, we'll get you out of here. Defense 10th per Aaron shots here at FTN. DVOA last year, solid across the board. Strength of schedule this year, sort of middle of the road per Vegas projected win totals. Even non-conference here, I have your projected wins 95.5 for your opponents. That's about middle of the pack. Talk about expectations for the Jags. Defense, players coming in, and that strength of schedule here. Because again, Jaguars are a team really looking to win the division and go deep in the playoffs.
Yeah, the defense defense, it's funny because that's been sort of the big question mark. What's it going to look like? You bring in new coordinator Ryan Nielsen. He's going to a more 4-3. Does that mean more inside work for Trayvon Walker? Signing Eric Armstead? How does that impact the way they're going to do stuff? They didn't take a cornerback high in the draft. They brought in Ronald Darby to kind of be the starter on the outside, but they took a kid out of Florida State, Jarian Jones, another kid out of Ole Miss, DeAndre Prince. So signing Darnell Savage as a safety, second-year player Antonio Johnson coming back. They have really high expectations for him. So you've got all these pieces, especially in the back end, that they're not 100% sure how they're going to fit in yet. And you could sit there and there would be maybe 10 defensive snaps at these OTAs, and there would be 10 different lineups out there. Especially in the secondary. And you're like, okay, how do you figure all that out? So they've got a lot of work to do there. But, Ryan Nielsen likes to play a lot of man coverage. And if Trayvon Walker, Josh Allen are able to kind of continue the way they pressured the quarterback last year, 17 and a half sacks for Josh Allen and 10 for Trayvon Walker, if they can kind of get a little bit more pressure even than they did last year with the addition of Armstead, maybe that'll help a little bit. But heard rave reviews from the players. They really like Nielsen. He's an energetic guy. He's somebody who'll get down and jump in there and demonstrate a drill. So we'll see how that works out. It's sort of like the big question here in Jacksonville, like after the Trevor Lawrence stuff, is like, what is that defense going to look like? Because we have no idea. You mentioned the schedule. Look, it's a tough start. They've got 4 playoff teams right out of the gate. They're at Miami. They've got Cleveland at home. They're at Buffalo and they're at Houston, and at Buffalo is a Monday night game. So we'll have a pretty good idea where they stand after that first 4 weeks. Then here's the other thing. They go to London. They play the Bears as a visiting team, and then they play the Patriots as the home team. So they should win those games. Then they come back, and then in a 5-game stretch, they've got 4 more playoff teams. So, we'll know by the end of October where this team really stands. But they've got to be able to navigate that first part of that schedule, those first 4 games, and come out of there at least 500 to try and have a chance to all of a sudden compete in a division that's way better than we thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I completely agree. And, what we're looking at here, always thought about this since 1994, Mike. 4 teams, new teams, have made the playoffs every year that did not make it the year before. I think this is going to be Jacksonville's year. Folks, Michael DiRocco, amazing work on X at ESPN DiRocco. Jags reporter, has all the insight. Thank you, sir, for a few minutes. As always, we're looking forward. It's June. July's going to be here. We're refreshed and replenished, and I think the Jaguars are ready for a playoff year, in my opinion. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it, Mike. Thanks for having me.